Hello, and welcome to another episode of Becoming Rock Solid. Our bodies are such a technological marvel, from emitting biophotons to conducting electricity to having this vast communication system that is all in harmony with nature. And on today's episode, we're going to be diving in with Dr. Catherine Clinton, and we're going to be learning about our bodies on the quantum level and a lot of take action advice that you can implement at home for yourself to start optimizing this incredible piece of technology. Let's dive in.
I keep it rocking like promise. I'm way too turned up on a mission. Ain't no sitting in silence. It's to electrify the shot. Find the muscle you're hiding, hard at the pressure. I bring the pressure to the bitch. I don't ride and see me live. Get it right. Free your mind. We got some living to do. We bring it big from a trauma, make them sick. You know he flexing when they ask you who you with. We gon' rep it for life. Rock solid, rock solid, rock solid. We becoming rock solid. Hey.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. And with us today is Dr. Catherine Clinton. Dr. Clinton is a licensed naturopathic physician, online quantum biology health educator, and author. And she is currently writing her first book, Interconnected, and she's the creator of numerous online courses in quantum biology and a practicing naturopathic physician with a focus on gut health, autoimmunity, and psychoneuroimmunology. Welcome, Dr. Clinton.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive into these topics with you guys today.
Oh, we're so excited. And we've been following your work for so long. And, you're putting out such incredible information that we're really excited to share with our audience today. And we're going to be getting into a few topics. But first, let's kind of get everyone familiar with, biofield medicine and quantum biology. Can you kind of introduce that for us and our audience, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of a new and emerging field. I mean, it's actually been around since the birth of quantum physics, but it hasn't been till the early 2000s that we actually got physical evidence that living systems like plants, animals, and our own human body are incorporating quantum phenomenon like quantum entanglement, quantum tunneling, superposition, quantum coherence to affect function in the body. And those are big names. And basically, in simple terms, quantum biology is the study of how the smallest building blocks of life, the flow of electrons, the flow of protons, photons of light, vibrations from sound, how they impact living systems. And it's profound. They have an enormous impact on our living systems. And that's what quantum biology looks at. It looks at the impacts of light, sound, fields of energy, electrical fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, scalar fields, and how these things impact the body. And water plays a special role in all of this as well. So it's an exciting new field.
Yeah, I mean, with our bodies being primarily water and being able to carry frequency through it, I mean, it's really all so fascinating. And what I've been learning and what we've been learning more about water, it's not just the tap water and it's not just your drinking water, but structured water, the fourth phase of water, is entirely different than what people, I think understand to know about water. What makes structured water, the fourth phase of water, so different?
That's a great question. And I think, honestly, we are just kind of scratching the surface here. But the work of Professor Gerald Pollack and his team out of the University of Washington, he was the first one to identify this second phase of liquid water, or this fourth phase of water. We're so used to thinking about a solid phase with ice, a gaseous phase with vapors or steam, and of course that liquid phase that we drink. But what he found was that with hydrophilic surfaces or water-loving surfaces, When water comes up to those surfaces, it's not repelled away. It can come right up to the surface. And when that happens, something incredible happens. That water changes organization. It becomes more gel-like, more viscous, and it takes on a negative electrical charge. Now, so many things in our human body are hydrophilic or water loving and allow water to come up and do this transformation. Some people call it cell-bound water, interfacial water, bound water, biological water. There are many different names for it, but Professor Pollack termed it EZ water or exclusion zone water because as this first sheet of water forms against a hydrophilic surface, he was first studying synthetic forms that were water loving, like Naphion. And then he moved on to biological surfaces like cellulose in plants or collagen in our own body. And as one sheet of this EZ liquid crystal water starts to form, he proposes it takes on this lattice formation, much like a honeycomb. And as one sheet forms, it acts as a template for more sheets to form. And it's infrared energy that builds this fourth phase of water or liquid crystal EZ water. And like I said, it's negatively charged. Now, the interesting thing is our cell membranes, our fascia, our DNA, our tissue, they are all water loving and allow the water to come up and do just that. And they are really depending on a negative electrical charge for vitality and function. We see that when we start to lose our negative charge, when a cell starts to lose its negative electrical charge, we have immune dysfunction, we have all kinds of things that go awry because that cell membrane potential, that negative electrical charge is so vital to that cell's health and function. And so this EZ liquid crystal water that forms around the cell is negatively charged. And as it builds, it pushes out a positively charged hydrogen or proton and creates this zone of water that's positively charged. Researchers are calling it a proton wire or a proton-rich zone. But basically what you have is this negatively charged water that's right against the cell or tissue. And then right outside of that is this positively charged zone of water. And that separation of charge between the two zones, just like the separation of charge in a 9-volt battery, creates potential energy. And in the laboratory, Pollack put an electrode in the negatively charged EZ water and one in the positively charged water that forms directly outside of it. And it was enough to light an LED light bulb. Absolutely incredible. So you have this negative electrical charge, which is so vital for our health. Then you have this water battery. It also creates free electrons, which are so important in the body. And it's just completely changes our paradigm and perspective of what's happening and what really impacts true health in the body.
That's fascinating. So this transformation from like regular H2O into structured water inside the body, is that something that just happens automatically in your body, or do you need some type of, I think you mentioned, did you say UV helps change into structured water? So like getting sunshine, is that something that helps inside of our body? Or do you need to drink structured water to get that effect?
Great question. So yes, infrared energy is the light and energy that builds that water zone in the body. And like you said, the most abundant source of infrared energy in our solar system is the sun. And anytime we go outside, even if we're sitting underneath a tree in the shade, we are completely enveloped in infrared energy as long as the sun is up. It doesn't even have to be a nice day. Cloudy, gray, dreary day still has an abundance of infrared energy. And ultraviolet light excites this phase of water. It has it create more free electrons. And so, I mean, let's think about what creates infrared energy to begin with. The sun is a huge source of that. Saunas, a warm bath, movement. All of these things are creating infrared energy in the body and helping to build that form of structured water in the body. When we're talking about structured water in a glass, it's a little bit of a different idea. They are sort of the leading theory about that is the quantum electrodynamic theory of water. And that's just a big title for how these clusters of coherent domains, how the hydrogens in water form a cluster that can hold energy, and it can hold electromagnetic field energy and resonate with the electromagnetic fields in our environment. And we can create structured water by stirring it. Again, movement. We can put it in the sun or an infrared sauna to add energy into the water. And it's not this one-to-one equation, right? So we have an 8-ounce glass of structured water and we drink that. And that means that we have 8 ounces of structured water going to our cell membranes. It's not that simple. What seems to be happening is that that energy that's being held in the water is then available to the body to use for whatever it needs. And the water is sort of that foundation that can then go on to be built into this negatively charged cell-bound water. So they're both important, but there's just a little bit of nuance there.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So when I'm stirring up my pre-workout powder before the gym, I'm actually structuring my water at the same time.
Absolutely. And there's researchers out there that have shown that metal, if you were to use a metal spoon, it does that even more readily. So it's just a fascinating field of science that is emerging right now.
That's interesting. So is there some potential there for like extracting electricity out of this? You mentioned how they started a light bulb there.
Yes, it has been researched as a potential source of energy. It's also been researched as a way to filter water because, like we said, it takes on this lattice formation, this different structure, becomes more gel-like. And when it does that, it pushes out all the solutes and particles and pollutants. So it's also been studied to as for use as a water filtration system. It's absolutely fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I've heard so much about structured water and even testaments. I have friends who have purchased, a structured water unit and they've given their dog structured water versus the tap water. Now the dog, will only drink the structured water, right? And you hear about, with the pipe systems, it's just unnatural with all these kind of things. So it doesn't let the natural flow of water happen. So yeah, it's just really, really interesting stuff. So,
It is. And it's, if we think about it, it's the downsides of it. Now it is new and emerging, right? So we're always watching the science, but what are the downsides of stirring your water or putting it in the sun, right? It's like the side effects of that are there are no known side effects to that. So we're talking about a free, accessible, and pretty non-invasive, right, way to impact our health. So it's exciting.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was first learning about structured water, I think I was looking at machines that do it. These are like a couple $1,000s a machine, but you don't really need all that, huh? You can just stir or set it in the sun and structure it other ways, huh?
Yeah, there are all kinds of ways. And there's some great machines and devices out there. People ask me all the time, like, what's your favorite or what's your advice there? And I just think that if a company is doing its due diligence, it has research behind its product and it proudly displays that research. So if somebody's in the market for something like that, then the product that they're looking at should probably have some research on it that's displayed on their website. And the ones that I know of do. And so that's another way to kind of vet because it has become so popular that some companies are just trying to get into the market as fast as they can to kind of capitalize on this sort of trendy new thing of structured water, right? And so that's a way to really kind of make sure that the device or the company that you might be interested in is doing their due diligence and really has people's health in mind.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, from water, it's connected in our bodies. You mentioned the collagen, right? And it's flowing all around us. And the other thing that's all around us is our fascia. And then so that's connected too with this whole communication system in our body. What's going on there, Dr. Clinton?
Absolutely. It is incredible, right? So,
Yeah.
collagen, if we think of fascia, like what is fascia? Fascia is this connective tissue web in the body, and it starts at our most external layers of our skin and it goes all the way down to the bones. And this network is made out of connective tissue, and connective tissue is made out of mostly collagen. And when we look at collagen, we see that, again, it is able to take this water and create this liquid crystal easy water that we've been talking about. And so all of a sudden now we have this idea of the combination of both the fascia, the collagen network, and the water that's lining it. And the fascia can go into our cells, right? It goes through those integrins right into the cytoskeleton of the cell. So you have this, from the macro to the micro web of connective tissue, and it's communicating with sound, light, vibration, and the water that lines it is this reservoir for energy, right? So this water that's lining our collagen, and our collagen is semiconductive, right? So it can transmit this electrical current. And what we see is that our collagen is this triple helix. We're used to thinking of DNA in that double helix, but these really small tubules of collagen create what researchers call tropocollagen nanotubules. And those are just really small tubes of this triple helix of fascia, of collagen. And this collagen becomes completely covered on the inside of the tube and the outside of the tube with this easy structured water. And what happens is this collagen is a semiconductor, and this liquid crystal water, starting at the surface of our skin with exposure to light, it's built with infrared energy, like we talked about from the sun, but it's also excited by that ultraviolet light. And that creates this reservoir or repository of free electrons. And there's a way to look at health in the body as an abundance of electrons and healthy, or a deficiency of electrons and leaning towards disease and unhealthy function. Pain, inflammation, disease states, those are associated with a decrease in electrical charge or a decrease in electrons. And so we have this body-wide fabric of collagen completely covered in this special structured easy water that is creating these electrons, and they're free electrons. So they don't have to stay bound to those molecules within that water lattice. They're free to move along this system. So now all of a sudden we have this body-wide connective tissue network that can shuttle electrons potentially where needed in the body to help with the deficiency of energy. And when you look at it that way, it starts to get really profound, the impact of water in the body, fascia in the body. It's incredible.
Yeah, that makes me think about the study on grounding, where they talk about how the Earth's surface is full of free electrons, and when you stand on that, make contact with that, those electrons travel through the fascia, and they can find spots of inflammation and spots that need healing, and they can kind of go to work over there.
Absolutely. Spot on. That's exactly what James Oshman talks about in his research with grounding or earthing, putting our bare feet on the surface of the earth. And the surface of the earth has this infinite sea of free electrons. And when we put our fascial pads, the bottom of our feet really is a really large fascial pad, a pad of fascia. And when we put that in contact with this sea of free electrons, Oshman says that we have the capacity to excite that collagen network. We have the capacity to regulate, recharge, get those electrons moving where they need to be to help with inflammation, pain, just like you said. And the research certainly shows that. I think now we're over 50 different research studies on earthing, grounding, and the benefits of how it helps with
Oh,
blood flow, blood pressure, inflammation, pain, wound healing, so many different things. It's an exciting new avenue. And again, this is free, this is
Yeah.
accessible, and the downsides are pretty low.
Yeah, nature remains undefeated. How long does someone need to ground for to experience some good benefits? How long should a
Another
grounding
great,
session be? Yeah.
yeah, that's another great question. So we can kind of think of it as plugging in our charger to charge a device. As soon as we do that, the device is being charged, right? So there is that instantaneous capacity of earthing. As soon as we make contact, there's something happening, there's a recharge happening. Now, it kind of just depends on the individual and how much they need charging, right? So if we run our device down and it's at zero, we might need to charge it for an hour or two versus if it just needs a quick charge up. So the same thing kind of applies to individuals. It depends really on their state of inflammation, what an ideal session would be. But we see benefits instantaneously. We see benefits under 5 minutes. We see benefits at 20 minutes. And I'm talking about the research studies that have been done. We see benefits certainly overnight. A lot of the researchers have looked at, Clint Ober with his research started with grounding pads, where he took a pad and had an electrical conductive port, and then he grounded that into the ground. And that's how really earthing came to be. He noticed that it had incredible benefits for his own health. And then he extended that to trials with other people and saw that the benefits weren't just for him.
Mhm.
So all kinds of different times have been shown to be beneficial. But even if it's a short amount of time, it starts to recharge us instantaneously as soon as we make contact.
Mhm. Is that the same researcher that did that work with the Tour de France cyclist, and they were showing like somebody would be like cut open from getting into a bike wreck or something, and they would put the grounding pads on overnight, and within a day, there was just remarkable healing that had happened in that area.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, if we think about it, that makes sense because a lot of people hear earthing and grounding and they're like, oh, this is just woo and just, this relationship with the earth. But really, what we're talking about is electricity, right? We're talking about researchers like Robert O. Becker and how he discovered that the body has an electrical current, and healing wounds take on a specific electrical current. And to heal them, takes a different electrical current. And when he put that electrical current on bone fractures, wounds, the amount of healing, the times of healing were much lower. It was much more efficient. And that work is still being done by researchers like Michael Levin. Michael Levin is an incredible researcher who is, I mean, he's publishing like 30, 40 research papers a year. He's so prolific in this space. And what he's found is that negative electrical charge is so important. It's important for wound healing, bone fractures. It's important for the state of health in the cell. He's really doing incredible research showing that any decrease in that negative electrical charge of a cell, the cell starts to exhibit signs that we would associate with a cancerous cell. It starts replicating really quickly, rapidly dividing uncontrollably, just like we would see in a cancerous cell. And then when you restore that natural negative electrical charge to the cell, that stops. It returns back to normal. It has healthy, normal function. So this is something that I think we really need to start wrapping our heads around when it comes to health, that the body is an electric being. And the state of electrical charge in our cells, in our tissue, in our overall body has a profound impact on our ability to function healthy, to our vitality, our longevity, and even serious states of pathology. So I'm hopeful that in the next, decade that we start to really embrace this vision of the body as an electrical being.
Hmm.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I think it would open up, so many doors, so many opportunities for healing, so a much more broader consciousness of, how incredibly intricate these bodies are, and even for the fact that like we are electrical beings, and yeah, we apparently even emit these biophotons and we light up. There's all this research about like we're glowing humans. Is that what's going on?
Mhm.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, biophotons are the light emission from our own cells, from our mitochondria, our DNA, our metabolic processes. And one of the pioneers in this field, Fritz Albert Popp, he discovered that these biophotons aren't random. It's not just, oh, okay, when there is a metabolic action, then light is emitted, it's discharged. No, they are coherent, meaning that they really look like they are a communication system in the body, that the body is utilizing light as a way to communicate. And we see this, for example, with cells that emit really high biophoton emission are associated with a stressed cell. It's like the cell is saying, okay, help, help. It's like
Yeah.
an SOS kind of
Yeah.
signal. I'm
Shooting up a
stressed. I
flare
need
gun.
extra help.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And a cell that has a really diminished biophoton emission is kind of the other spectrum. It is going into that dysfunctional state, it is damaged, it's on the way to cell death. So there's this Goldilocks zone of this sweet spot of biophoton emission that signals a healthy functioning cell. And biophotons are an incredible new insight because it's not just our cells that are emitting biophotons. The microbes within our microbiome are also emitting biophotons, and they are communicating with each other. It looks like from the research, they're communicating via light. So we have this
Awesome.
incredible new
Wow.
perspective of a light language, a light
Yeah.
communication
Hmm.
happening in the body.
Ah,
Fascinating. Yeah, that makes me think about the gut-brain axis and how that can be associated with depression and different mental states too. When you start to get gut dysbiosis and you start to lose that good bacteria and get more of that bad bacteria.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also interconnected, right? And it's just sort of mind-blowing to think that our emotional state, an emotion that starts somewhere else, can travel instantaneously to the lining of the gut, affect not only the lining of the gut, but the microbes and microbiome that are living there. And it's just really a testament to this incredible interconnected tapestry that the body is and how it's all so beautifully interconnected.
Yeah, yeah. That's why they call our gut the second brain, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, to take it back to fascia a little bit, and speaking of the second brain, it kind of seems like fascia is almost just an extension of the brain too, right? It's full of these nerves. It's got more nerves than muscle, I believe I've heard. It helps you kind of know where you're at in space, you know. So if you're playing pickleball or tennis, you know, that kind of increases that ability. And the idea that you put in your Instagram post the other day about fascia as a place of trauma storage. Can we explore that a little bit? That's always been a topic that's really fascinated me.
It is fascinating, right? And this is something that body workers, people that work with, chiropractors, massage therapists, myofascial release practitioners, anyone who's doing body work and working with the fascial system. This is something that they have been reporting for decades and decades, if not millennia, when we start to get into acupuncture and Chinese medicine and some of these ancient uh, medicinal cultures, right? So fascia has this incredible ability to store trauma, both physically and emotionally. And what we see is that a scar, for instance, we were talking about the fascia just a minute ago as this kind of conveyor belt of electrical charge, right? So when we think about it, if the fascia has a scar from physical trauma, a surgery, or it has a stuck, adhered guarding position. So when we have an emotional trauma, often there is a physical guarding posture to that emotion or that experience, that trauma. And that also is associated with this interference pattern in that flow of energy through the fascia. And the research that's come out in the last decade is really exciting because it shows that there's an association with different mental emotional states, such as anxiety, depression, and the state of the fascia. Those mental emotional states have been associated with this stuck, adhered fascia. And then just recently, in the last couple of years, there have been research studies out there showing that a release in that stuck fascia gives an improvement to those mental and emotional states of anxiety and depression. So you see this bidirectional. It isn't just that I'm tight and inflamed and my fascia's stuck, and so that impacts my mental health, right? There's this bidirectional component where releasing that fascia actually impacts those states of depression and anxiety. It's really incredible. There's one of my favorite research studies as of late is this study where they're looking at women in the fashion industry. And these women work long hours under a lot of pressure. And they took a group and divided it into two groups. And with one of the groups, they said, okay, just take a break. Just go lay down, relax, let the tension go. Then they took the other group and they did a suboccipital, right below the base of the um, skull, right where it meets the
Occiput there,
top
yeah.
of the neck. Yeah, exactly. That area, that suboccipital area, they did a fascial release. And what they found was instantaneous change in these women's heart rate, blood pressure, and heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is a measurement of the resilience in our nervous system, the state of our vagus nerve, the vagal tone, right? The higher the vagal tone, the more resilient we are to stress. When we look at the nervous system, there's that sympathetic side of the nervous system, that fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
We are in danger, time to be alert. And then that parasympathetic side of the nervous system where we are safe, we can rest, we can digest. And both are important. But many people today in modern day life are kind of living in a sympathetic dominant state. They're always under stress. The alarm goes off. I gotta go. And that kind of stress remains until they fall asleep at night, day in and day out. And to see something like a fascial release improve the ability of the vagus nerve to vacillate back and forth between parasympathetic and sympathetic state to build resilience in the nervous system is really exciting. I'm looking forward to more research in this area for sure.
Wow.
So if we're releasing those trauma areas in fascia, then it's works more by doing kind of a physical fascia release, or can you release that by processing your own traumas mentally?
Yeah, there's so many ways to approach fascial health. And, you know, physical, getting a good therapist, a good myofascial release therapist, a good body worker, chiropractor, osteopathic physician, all of these things can be a wonderful way to provide a physical fascial release. There's also fascial maneuvers and exercises out there that people can do, but there's so many ways to do it. It really depends on the individual. Our fascia is circadian driven. So aligning with the rhythm of the sun, getting that AM sunlight in the morning, natural light breaks throughout the day, and then lowering the lights at night, lowering those sources of blue and artificial light that tell our brain, oh, it's noon, when really it's 10 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
limiting those, maybe blue light blocking glasses, or we move to a light that's more like this salt lamp. It's more of a red and orange tone that simulates a setting sun, and it doesn't block melatonin. This can be helpful for fascia.
Mm.
Working on that water battery within us and hydration. That can be helpful for fascia. Working on our nervous system. I mean, there's so many different avenues we can take to affect change in the fascial network. That's why it's so exciting that an individual can really come at it from so many different ways depending on their background and just what resonates with them.
Yeah, we've made that switch in the evenings too from we have just like blue can lights, the modern blue can lights they have nowadays. And we went and bought some incandescent lights to put in some lamps around the house to turn on in the evenings. And when you make that switch in the evening, it starts to get dark outside and you turn off the blue lights and you turn on the red lights, your whole body just kind of goes, you just feel this like wave of relaxation. It just feels so much more natural. And if you think about it, how we evolved outside away from lights in the evening time was campfires and candlelights and stuff like that, right? And so it just seems like a more aligned with our natural way of being.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds so insignificant, but it's just so profound the impact that light has on the body. When we go out in that morning light and, sunrise is rich in that red and infrared light, it tells our nervous system to be calm, that we are safe, that parasympathetic side of the nervous system. It allows our cortisol to slowly rise. Then when the light, within the first hour or two of morning, as it starts to rise over the horizon and rise in the sky, you start to get more blue light, more ultraviolet light, and this signals so many biological cascades in the body. It impacts our immune system, our metabolic state, our ability to burn fat, our sex hormones, our neurotransmitters. I mean, it is absolutely mind blowing when you look at the amount of biological functions that are triggered by this AM sunlight and this change in the sun rising, telling your body, okay, it's morning. It's time to get going. We got to start all these processes. And it was 2017 that three scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize for their work on chronobiology. And that is the field of how light impacts biology. And they found that almost every single cell in the body has a circadian gene, a circadian clock. So the light that comes into our eyes, it hits this thin cell lining called the retina in the back of the eye. And that retina is filled with light detectors, melanopsin, and it picks up on this blue and ultraviolet light. And that signal is transmitted to our master circadian clock in the hypothalamus. And that signal is then relayed to all these different cells throughout the body, impacting our cardiovascular function, respiratory function, digestive function, immune function, inflammatory state, hormonal balance. I mean, it's just absolutely so profound. And then as the sun sets, as the light lowers, it sends a different signal. It says, okay, it's time to do all of these other things. It's time to release melatonin from the pineal gland. It's time to clean up all those dysfunctional and damaged cells from the body so that everything is working properly. It's time to prime the immune system. It's time for metabolic signals like insulin or leptin to be received by the brain. So it's actually while sounding trivial, it is so foundational, that light environment, on how it impacts our biology and our overall health.
Yeah. So important to just wake up and get that first hour of sunrise. We make a habit of it to get that sunlight on our eyeballs, and to get that on there. And I find it such a difference, right? Going to bed, it's easier to fall asleep. It's easier to start waking up in the morning. Everything just resets, and you feel so much different.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of, signals that happen when the light comes into the eyes, another one that I find fascinating is melanin production and how, the light comes in, stimulates the pituitary gland that releases this melanite stimulating hormone. And it tells your body, hey, we're out in the sun. Let's produce some melanin to protect our DNA, right? And then that leads me into there's a study recently about some researchers were saying that melanin being charged by sunlight can actually produce energy in the body. And they were kind of hypothesizing that that is our primary energy system, and food as an energy source is secondary to that.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And these researchers are doing an incredible job exploring melanin. But I just want to also lay a foundation here that this idea of bioelectricity has been researched for over a century by incredible researchers, Nobel Prize researchers like Albert St. Georgi. And so it's not sort of out of the blue. There is evidence out there pointing to this. And melanin, these researchers have found that melanin is a semiconductor too, right? It takes energy, it can conduct it through these melanin chains. And the interesting thing about melanin is it's completely covered in this liquid crystal bound water that we've been talking about.
Mm.
And when ultraviolet light hits that water around melanin, it can split into molecular oxygen and molecular hydrogen. And I bet a lot of people in your audience have heard about molecular hydrogen. It's really popular right now because it is a selective antioxidant. It seems to be working by going in and supporting mitochondrial function and acting as a scavenger to some of these free radicals. And so the idea that we have that capacity to create molecular hydrogen and molecular oxygen via the water that's lining melanin and exposure to light is absolutely incredible. And other researchers have taken this one step further. And in autopsies, the brains of Alzheimer's patients were found, and Parkinson's patients, neurological degenerative diseases. These, on autopsy, these brains were found to be very low in melanin, because we think of melanin in our eyes, in our hair, on our skin, but it's all throughout the body. And it's prevalent in our brain. It's called neuromelanin. And these researchers found that it was very low in these neurodegenerative patients. And when they took neurodegenerative patients, Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's patients, and exposed them to a source of light, they proposed that it was the melanin that was splitting that water, creating molecular hydrogen, creating molecular oxygen, and this extra source of energy, because they saw improvements in these patients. And what an exciting time to see something as simple and, again, non-invasive like light exposure helping some of these devastating conditions that tremendously impact patients' lives, but also their families as well and communities. So I'm looking forward to more research and acceptance on these different ideas.
Yeah, kind of goes against the mainstream advice of block yourself from the sun and put your sunglasses on and slather yourself in sunscreen and get your big sun hat on and avoid the sun at all costs, especially for older people. You see that even more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we're so good in society of being very black or white, all or nothing, big gulp or teeny shot glass, right? But really what we're looking at is common sense. Like sun can damage the skin. It can damage this collagen network that we've been talking about. And so too much sun is not good. But no sun can be really dangerous to our health as well. There's some recent research studies out there showing that sun exposure is really a factor in decreasing all cause mortality, all causes, right? So cardiovascular related deaths, inflammatory conditions, obesity, all of these things showing a benefit from exposure to the sun. And I think we just need to be mindful, right? And the way we do expose ourselves to the sun, especially here in the States, is we go through winter, we don't see any sun, our skin doesn't see any sun until it's a really hot summer day. And then we go to the beach at high noon and we're eating processed inflammatory foods and we're getting skin damage. And really, we can work on this year round by getting exposure to low UV index sun, morning sun, spring sun, and kind of building that tolerance throughout the year. So it's not this what I described as a setup for
Hmm.
skin damage. um, but it's a powerful tool that we should be using safely for our health. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with our health and with the sun and everything, with the mitochondrial health, we're out in the sun and everything, we're doing what we can. But the one thing that it seems like we cannot escape from, Dr. Clinton, is the 5G towers and the EMFs and everything and the impact of that. Can you speak a little bit up to that and how that's impacting our mitochondrial health?
Yeah, I think that that's an important thing that you bring up. And the research out there is still kind of searching for what the mechanism of action is. Is it that it increases calcium influx into the cells, which has been shown? We know that would decrease their negative electrical charge. Is it damaging to DNA? What's the mechanism of, is it a blend of different things? But what we do know is that there are things we can do to mitigate this exposure. And you're right, we are kind of living in a sea of Wi-Fi, of non-natural electromagnetic fields. But we have to remember that the closer these fields are to the body, the more intense and profound the impacts are going to be, right? So if we're wearing Bluetooth headphones, if we are sleeping right by a router, if we're sleeping by a charging phone, like so many people do, there are ways that we can mitigate this. Just a few feet, you see a dramatic decrease in the exposure, the intensity of those electromagnetic fields. Once you get to 15 feet, the exposure is even more dramatic. So there are things we can do. We can wire our computers, our even our phones. We can unplug the router at night. We can put our phone on airplane mode. We can put it in a different room when we sleep. We can just be mindful that the closer that source of electromagnetic fields and frequency is, the more impact it's going to have. And so keeping those things away, putting people on speakerphone when you're talking on the phone rather than having it right up to your ear, can make a profound difference in the amount of radiation that the body is receiving from those exposures. And then what we talked about with earthing. Earthing is a wonderful way to help rebalance the electrical charge of the body when
Mm.
we can't escape the sea of EMF that we currently live in.
Yeah, no, it's all out there, but yeah, I guess the key is taking those precautions, like you say, and moving them away from you, not using your phone on speaker, keeping that phone away from your pillow. It kind of makes me like, ugh, like those apps that require you to stick your pillow in bed with you so it can read whether or not you're snoring and stuff. I'm like, I don't want it that close to me. But yeah, no, it's been an absolutely eye-opening interview with you, Dr. Clinton, and we're so grateful to have you come on Becoming Rock Solid and share your knowledge and your expertise with our audience. So thank you so much for being on the show today. And so where can people connect connect with you? And do you have a launch date for your upcoming book or any news on that you can share?
Well, not quite yet on that, but people can find me at Dr. Catherine Clinton. My website is drcatherineclinton.com. I have a lot of free resources there, videos and PDF guides. I share my social media handles on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are Dr. Catherine Clinton. I love sharing this information, so you can find me there. And I appreciate you guys having me on today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure was all ours and the honor was
Yes. Thank you so much.
much.
Yeah,
Absolutely
thank you.
thrilled to have you on, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.